right above me is a 30-foot long deck, but right below that is a DIY home drainage system for that deck that keeps this space below it perfectly dry year-round. If you want to know how we built it, keep on watching. Let's get started. In areas where there's a lot of precipitation, many decks on the underside look like this. And of course, right underneath it is our concrete patio that really isn't very usable because there's plenty of moisture that hits this concrete patio day in and day out here in the Pacific Northwest. Our poor princess tent is just one thing that has seen better days due to this, which is why I have finally decided to enclose this area and make sure that we don't have any precipitation falling underneath our deck right onto our patio. But I do have a very large caveat to this, is that I want to make sure it's very DIY friendly and affordable for anyone to do. The first step to this project is to take some pressure treated lumber, run it through our table saw so we have even 1-inch thick strips. In an effort to think about safety, I'm not running this straight through because I don't want to get my hand that close to the blade, so I do flip every single piece over at approximately 1 foot of space still needed to be cut and still run that through the table saw as well. These specific strips are going to be applied to the beam side and the beam side only due to the thickness, and in order to get a perfect line all the way across, I make a mark at 4 inches on both sides, then run a chalk line all the way down, snap it, and we have a perfect line for our strips to be laid upon. One tool that I didn't have on hand that I purchased for this project specifically was this adjustable height work platform that I got at my local Lowe's, and it comes in extremely handy on projects like this because I'm working on long spans versus being stationary in one position. I'm using a portable pneumatic nailer with 3-inch long galvanized nails. Each strip of lumber is nailed to every single joist that it hits, and as I noted earlier, these strips are approximately 4 inches away from the beam itself. With our 1-inch strips taken care of, we can move on to cutting more at a 1/2 inch, and this is because we want a downward slope away from our house so water can travel down the panel channels appropriately. Our 1/2-inch strips are placed on the opposite side of the deck, which is right up against our house, and I decided not to snap a string line at this location because I'm just going right up against the bottom of our galvanized joist hangers, which has a nice consistency all the way across our deck. Because these pieces are thinner, I do cut them down to size so the vast majority of the ends do line up with the bottom of the joist, and that just provides more structural support other than the ones that are right up against the gutter. In order to account for proper placement of the middle channel, I take the overall distance between our two channels, divide it by 2, and that's our dead center mark for our middle channel. Once marked on one side, I make a mark on the opposite side of the deck, then run my string line across and snap that line as well, so we have a perfect channel line to follow. With this being the middle channel, since our first channel was 1 inch thick and our second channel was 1/2 inch thick, this channel is going to be 3/4 inch thick. Proper slope is key, and in order to make it as simple and straightforward as possible, a 1 inch, 1/2 inch, and 3/4 inch channel seems to make it pretty straightforward from my perspective and an easy way to account for proper slope away from your house. Now, one of the key elements on this project is, of course, the paneling itself. Now, this is going to be what we're going to be using. It's basically just a PVC material for roofing. Of course, this is not normally used in these applications, but I figured that I have a really good idea as to why I want to use it and how it will channel directly down towards this side of the deck and drain properly away from the house. I certainly wanted to keep in mind that I wanted to keep this a very DIY budget-friendly project. In order to do so, I wanted to go with this material because I have worked with other drainage systems before and they are thousands of dollars. Yeah, not hundreds.
In order to cut our panels to the correct length, I take the overall measurement from the side of our house to the beam itself and then burn 2 inches because that will give us plenty of space for our water to drain off of our panels, but it won't hit our beam as well.
Once we have an accurate line drawn out, I grab my circular saw and run that across our panels. Now keep in mind that I do have a much better tool to use in this application later on in the video, because if you can see this, a circular saw can chip up this material, which is why I'm leaving the cut side on the house side and not towards the end of the deck where it's going to be more visible. All that to say is just keep watching, because I do have a much better tool to use next time. When it comes to installing these panels, I'm using my impact driver with roofing screws. Now the really nice thing about these roofing screws is that it has a built-in washer on the base of the head, which means that as long as it's right up against our paneling, there shouldn't be any leaks to account for when penetrating these panels, due to the fact that we have it already sealed with that washer. Okay, so I'm on top of the deck now. I just poured one. I'll pour one more, just to double check, make sure things are, draining properly. Now, let's go downstairs. Oh yeah, no leaks anywhere over here. Yes, 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 that is almost too perfect. Ah, it worked! No leaks anywhere over here. Yes. I'm so excited. So excited! It works! Now we can put up the rest up. Yep, let's put the rest up. Natural general excitement occurs basically when I'm doing something that I feel is correct and I feel confident in, however I haven't done for the first time, and therefore when it does work out quite perfectly, that's always a very exciting moment. So figured I left that in there, and on to the next panel. With these panels being grooved, I'm basically slipping one half circle span into the first panel, making sure those seams line up nicely before I tack it into place. As long as we have lined up seams, I can then start screwing and move on to the next screw. These panels are in a wave pattern, and key note is that I'm only applying screws on the panels that are butting right up against our strips that we installed earlier. Any of the lower grooves do not receive any screws, because that's where the water is going to be channeling through. I'm also applying screws at every other bay, which basically means that I'm only having to install 6 screws at every single panel location. And as you can vividly see through the installation process, I am using a laser level throughout this entire process, because I want to make sure that all of those screws are lined up as close to aligned as possible, because as you can imagine, working on panels overhead while trying to balance these panels on your head while simultaneously screwing in position makes it very difficult to concentrate on screwing locations. But obviously with the helping hand of a laser level, that takes the predetermined location out of the mix, where I know exactly where each screw needs to be placed. Very nice to have on hand. Just try and avoid the laser going directly into your eyes at all costs. And side note, it did start raining while during the installation process, and the panels worked. Most likely you will come to a point where you're going to inevitably have to notch something that is in your way. In this application, we are going right up against a gutter downspout, and in order to have pinpoint accuracy on where that notch needs to be placed on our next panel, I take a piece of scrap, note exactly where that gutter is located along with the depth that is needed, then trace that measurement right onto our next panel and cut it out. As I mentioned before, I did find a much better tool to cut these PVC panels, and it was the oscillating multi-tool. Yes, this tool works extremely well with this material, and even if it's oddly shaped, it's still quite easily able to maneuver around these waffle-shaped panels. Plus, because they're PVC and not metal, they're very easily bendable into place and will snap back perfectly into its shape, where an aluminum panel really generally wouldn't, or at least it would be more likely to bend and be damaged during the maneuvering process. At this point in time, I want to say a huge and special thank you to the sponsor of this week's video, Lowe's. They're a brand that I've personally used, known, and trusted for years, and the fact that they are actually diligently working with content creators like myself means a great deal to me, and one that I'm proud to be a part of.
We wanted to team up on a project that was not only DIY friendly, but affordable and can be done year round. Lowe's is also a part of YouTube shopping, so I will make sure that many of these products and materials that you find in this video are readily available on YouTube shopping, or of course at Lowe's stores or at lowes.com. Added bonus if you're watching this through the month of December, because Lowe's is having their December deal drops, which means that the vast majority of all these tools that you see in this video have major deals going on right now. That includes things like the work platform, drills, drill bits, circular saws, laser levels, and even pencils. All those deals are going on right now through the end of the year and potentially even past it. If you're interested, I'll make sure and have a link for those items in the description of this video, but till then, let's get back to the project. It is December in the Pacific Northwest, so it does get dark at 4 o'clock, so I decided to come back and tackle the final couple of panels the next day. Quick side note on the marking pencil that I am using for these panels, because it does come in handy, is that it has different types of lead. So it can come with your standard lead, but it also comes with a crayon version, which is what this red color is, and it works a lot better on wet PVC panels than a standard pencil would. As I butt up the last couple of panels, unless you're really lucky, you are going to inevitably have to cut down one panel eventually. And at that very last panel, I take a quick measurement while still acknowledging that I have to have an overlap between the panel right next to it. Key item here though is that whatever side you're cutting, you want to make sure that that is the overlap side, so you don't have to ever see that side again, because most likely this cut is not going to be that even. With our panel cut to the correct size, I then maneuver that cut edge into position. Once in position, it's screwed off just as we had previously done for the rest of them. With our entire panel system fully installed, we can move on to our gutter system. Just like the panels, we do have to also account for a downward slope for our gutter system so the water is draining properly. At this first side, I'm measuring at 6.5 inches, and on the opposite side, I'm measuring at 5 inches. That means we have a drop of 1.5 inches, which coincides nicely with approximately a 1/16 of an inch for every foot of span. With those two markings, I can then grab my chalk line and have a perfect sloped line to have a gutter run against. The gutters we're using on this project is a standard white K-style gutter system that is a vinyl construction, and I find this product not only easy to work with, but also quite easy to install with these clip systems. Now these clips go every 2 feet, as well as on each end of the gutter, and by sliding into place, the one thing I forget to think about is the fact that we really don't have a lot of wiggle room to work with at the top of our gutter in between our panel system that we just installed. In fact, this area was so tight that I bring in a flexible extension drill bit attachment. These are kind of a pain to work with, but extremely handy and useful to have if you have to work around very tight-knit areas like this. The ends of this vinyl gutter system gets a cap that's placed right onto it, and that has a built-in seal so water can't get through it. In terms of areas where one gutter meets another gutter, we install this unique U-channel bracket that connects both systems together, as well as keeps them watertight, with a bracket that goes on the inside of the gutter that also has a built-in seal around it. Eventually, you will most likely have to come to a point where you have to cut one of your gutters down to size, so in order to do so and make sure that it lines up with one of our posts, I make sure that our downspout lines up with that post, then mark a line exactly where that gutter needs to be cut. But how do you cut a gutter like this perfectly straight? The easiest way I found to do it was to take that bracket that connects these gutters together and use that as a template and a guide for my multi-tool to cut all the way around the gutter system. Made it extremely easy and straightforward, along with surprisingly straight. I first get our gutter brackets all installed, and once the entire system is installed, I can now move on to our downspout. I do have to apply a layer of vinyl adhesive at this location to make sure that that seam is watertight. Once I like where it's placed, I fasten down a few screws to keep it in position and move on to cutting a small section of vinyl gutter on the opposite side. We're having to do it this way mainly because of where our post is located, because if the post was at the very end of this beam, then I could just run that downspout at the very end. But because it's not, we have to run this small jog of gutter at this side so our downspout lines up perfectly with our 4x4 post. Our downspout, along with all the bracketry that comes with it, also is a vinyl base material, and eventually I'll be installing some type of catch basin system for the water to go into, but till then, it's just going to be draining away from the house, which is exactly what I want. But with our gutter system now fully installed, I'm proud to say that we are done with this deck drainage system. From my perspective, this is really a very DIY friendly type project, something that I feel many people can take on, with the added bonus of knowing that it's much more cost effective doing it this way than other systems out on the market. Plus, it decided to rain right after we were completed, so I was able to get some footage of it actually working in a real life application, but hopefully later on I can get some footage of showcasing it when it starts downpouring and seeing if there's any leaks along the way. So far so good, but till then, I still find this is truly one beautiful, sexy beast of a deck drainage system. Oh yeah,